On the evening of September 2, 1998, Swissair Flight 111 took off from New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport, bound for Geneva, Switzerland, known as the UN Shuttle. Due to the high number of diplomats, UN officials, and professionals who often took this route, Swissair 111 was a well-regarded flight with a reputation for exceptional service. On this particular evening, 215 passengers and 14 crew members were on board, many of them eager to return home after long travels or to begin new chapters in their lives. This flight, however, would end in one of the most tragic and mysterious aviation disasters of the 20th century. Through the investigation that followed, a haunting story of mechanical failure, complex human error, and the terrifying limitations of modern technology began to unfold. Swissair Flight 111 was a McDonnell Douglas MD-11 aircraft, a type of plane designed for long-haul flights and known for its advanced features. It was outfitted with a sophisticated entertainment system that offered passengers the latest in flight luxuries, making Swissair a top choice for international travelers. The pilot in command was Captain Urs Zimmermann, an experienced aviator with over 10,800 hours of flight time. At his side was First Officer Stefan Lowe, another seasoned pilot with a strong command of the MD-11. As the plane climbed to its cruising altitude of 33,000 feet, the atmosphere in the cabin was one of calm and quiet. Passengers settled into their seats, some diving into the in-flight entertainment, while others prepared for the overnight journey across the Atlantic. The crew served the evening meal, and soon the cabin lights dimmed as passengers settled in for the long flight. At around 8:18 p.m., Swissair 111 was cruising off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, when the first signs of trouble appeared. A faint smell of smoke had begun to spread in the cockpit, but at first, neither the captain nor the first officer found it alarming. In an airplane, faint electrical smells can sometimes appear without causing problems. However, in this case, the smell didn't dissipate. In fact, it began to grow stronger. At 8:21 p.m., Captain Zimmermann radioed the Moncton Air Traffic Control Center in Canada, requesting a diversion to the nearest airport. The controller immediately suggested Halifax International Airport, which was about 80 miles away. At 8:24 p.m., Zimmermann declared an emergency and began preparations for an emergency landing. The situation was dire, but still manageable, or so the crew believed. As Swissair 111 began to descend, the crew attempted to isolate the source of the smoke. The MD-11 had been fitted with multiple systems to manage emergencies, including circuit breakers that could cut power to various parts of the plane. However, the fire, which started in the wiring insulation, was spreading fast, feeding on the oxygen-rich environment in the cockpit and the overhead panels. The crew faced a nearly impossible task, as smoke began to obscure their view, and the once faint odor became a thick, choking presence. Moments later, at 8:30 p.m., Captain Zimmermann relayed to air traffic control that the situation was deteriorating. What the pilots couldn't fully understand was just how quickly the fire was spreading through the aircraft's hidden wiring. The in-flight entertainment system, though a luxurious feature for passengers, had contributed an unexpected hazard: additional wiring behind the walls and above the ceiling panels. This wiring, combined with the plane's insulation material, had created the perfect conditions for a rapidly spreading fire. At 8:33 p.m., the crew tried to follow Swissair's emergency protocol by disconnecting the main power supply. However, this action inadvertently made their situation worse, as it cut power to critical systems and left the pilots struggling to control the aircraft. With instruments failing and smoke filling the cockpit, Captain Zimmermann and First Officer Lowe were left in a desperate, chaotic battle to keep the plane steady. As the minutes ticked by, the crew's communications became more fragmented. At 8:37 p.m., Swissair 111's transponder signal disappeared from radar, leaving the controllers at Halifax and Moncton unsure of the plane's exact position. On board, passengers could feel the plane descending faster than normal. Flight attendants rushed through the aisles, instructing passengers to brace for an emergency landing. Some passengers clasped hands, while others bowed their heads in silent prayer. At approximately 8:42 p.m., Swissair 111 was only 10 miles from Halifax, but in a tragic twist, the crew lost all control. The fire had burned through the cockpit ceiling, severing key electrical connections, and any remaining hope of safely landing the plane vanished. The aircraft, now completely dark and engulfed in thick smoke, was in freefall. At 8:43 p.m., the MD-11 crashed into the waters of St. Margaret's Bay, Nova Scotia, at an estimated speed of over 300 miles per hour. The force of the impact was catastrophic, instantly disintegrating the aircraft into tens of thousands of pieces. The impact site was a deep section of the bay, about 180 feet underwater, making immediate recovery efforts challenging. For the families awaiting their loved ones in Geneva, the news was both devastating and surreal. The flight that had promised a safe journey across the Atlantic had ended in tragedy. Many clung to hope, awaiting official word that survivors might be found. But as the hours turned into days, it became clear that all 229 people on board had perished. The Canadian Transportation Safety Board, TSB, launched an extensive investigation into the crash of Swissair Flight 111, recovering and examining over 2 million fragments of debris from the crash site. Each fragment told a piece of the story, revealing the chain of events that had led to the disaster. The most significant discovery was the cause of the fire: faulty wiring in the plane's entertainment system. The in-flight entertainment system, a relatively new feature, had been installed in such a way that its wires ran perilously close to other electrical systems. Over time, wear and tear, combined with the plane's insulation materials, had created conditions ripe for a fire. When the wiring began to short-circuit, the fire spread quickly, feeding on the insulation's flammable properties and ultimately leading to the cockpit's electrical failure. Further investigation revealed that the MD-11's design had contributed to the tragedy. The placement of certain wires, combined with insufficient fireproofing around the cockpit and electrical panels, had allowed the fire to spread uncontrollably. Additionally, the protocol followed by the pilots, which involved shutting down power to the aircraft in an attempt to isolate the fire, had inadvertently worsened the situation by disabling key controls. The TSB's final report, released 4 years after the crash, was a damning indictment of both Swissair and the MD-11's design. It called for stricter regulations on wiring insulation, fireproofing, and emergency procedures for future flights, ultimately leading to significant changes in aviation safety protocols worldwide. The changes were too late to save the lives lost on Swissair 111, but they helped prevent similar tragedies in the future. For the families of the victims, the TSB's findings offered some sense of closure, but little solace. The tragedy of Swissair 111 had left them with a deep wound that would never fully heal. Many families demanded accountability, filing lawsuits against Swissair, Boeing, which had acquired McDonnell Douglas, and the manufacturers of the in-flight entertainment system. These families became vocal advocates for airline safety reforms, attending press conferences, testifying before government bodies, and pushing for regulations that would prevent future fires caused by faulty wiring. Their activism helped spur changes in aviation regulations, including new standards for wiring and insulation, improved training for pilots on handling in-flight fires, and stricter requirements for emergency protocols on commercial aircraft. Swissair, once one of the world's most prestigious airlines, faced an enormous public relations crisis. The company poured resources into improving safety standards and compensating the victims' families. However, the financial strain and reputational damage ultimately contributed to the airline's collapse in 2001. Today, Swissair Flight 111 is remembered as a heartbreaking example of the unforeseen dangers of commercial aviation. A memorial stands along the coastline near Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia, where people from around the world come to pay their respects, engraved with the names of the 229 people who lost their lives. It serves as a reminder of the human lives affected by each flight, the importance of stringent safety measures, and the legacy left by those who fought to make flying safer. The changes brought about by Swissair 111's tragedy have undoubtedly made air travel safer. But the haunting final moments of that night, the helplessness felt by passengers and crew, remain a sobering testament to the cost of progress in aviation safety. As the sun sets over St. Margaret's Bay, the memory of Swissair 111 lingers, a story of human error, mechanical failure, and the bravery of those who tried, against all odds, to bring their passengers safely home.